In this video we're going to talk about the suspended fourth, which is one of my favourite chords actually. It's a really interesting one to experiment and play around with. Before we go into it in detail, let's just get the notation sorted out. That is a chord of C sus4 in a form that it might usually be played. Okay, you'll see it notated in one of these ways, either as C sus or as C sus4. Either way, it makes no difference. It's the same thing. Okay, how have we made that chord? Okay, there's a basic triad of C. Okay, now the clue is in the name of the chord, suspended fourth. Okay, that triad is made up of the first, third, and fifth notes of the scale of C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First, third, and fifth. The fourth is the F. Okay, so a suspended fourth chord is a chord that has had the fourth added. Okay, now in practice, if you play a chord as a sus4, you usually take out the third. Okay, because as you can hear, you get quite a jarring discord. Can be quite a nice effect sometimes, but in general it's best taken out. So there is our fourth. Okay, now sus4s are very common in modern sort of ballad comps. As you can hear, it's quite an interesting, rich, lush sound. One thing you can do if you've got if you're playing pop or a ballad-type song, one of the things you can often do, say you've got a C chord, and if you've looked at my videos on comps, on modern pop comps, you'll see me talking about this quite a bit. You can drop the sus in to make it more interesting. And combine it with the ninth, which is quite a nice sound. So that's C9, C9, C sus. Okay, and play around with those in quite interesting ways. Another interesting thing, that's C sus. If we move the C from there to there, we get a chord which all of a sudden looks very much like F9. And whether or not we call that chord C sus4 or F9 very much depends on what's going on in the rest of the harmony. So that chord we will probably call C sus or C sus4, whereas that chord we will probably call F9. Okay. If you're into jamming around and comping with more modern sort of poppy ballads, then it's worth playing around with susses. Just drop them in as you play a chord and see what happens. Because they make lovely, really interesting, complex sounds. Where you won't find them that often is in jazz, blues, show tunes, stuff like that. The sus really begins to pick up in popularity, especially in piano pop, kind of in the late 60s and 70s. It's not that common in music that's earlier than that. Even so, it's worth having a look out for because it will crop up every now and then. You sometimes also see it like that. Okay, so that chord is roughly C sus4. You could also call it something like G7 sus4. Okay, it can get a bit ambiguous about which is which. Just see how that is related to G7. So there's G7, and that we could call G7 sus4, especially if we had a G in the bass. If we had a C in the bass, we'd probably call it C sus4, and if we had an F in the bass, we'd probably call it F9. Okay, it doesn't really matter, but you'll see it written in all those different ways depending on context. Altogether, very interesting chord, okay, and worth experimenting with. If you've got any questions about fourths, or you want to demonstrate your own videos or whatever, or tell me about an interesting resource, or just want to say hi, feel free to add a comment, either on the YouTube thread where you'll find this video, or on the Jamcast page. jamcast.co.uk is my blog, and this video is embedded on the page there. If you can't find it, here's the address, jamcast.co.uk/sus4. You might also be interested, if you haven't come across it already, in my book, How to Really Play the Piano, the stuff your teacher never taught you, which covers all this kind of thing. If you have found the video as a result of reading the book, then you will find that the sus4 chord is dealt with in some detail towards the end of part 1. Okay, there we go, page 36 of part 1, suspended fourth. Brilliant. Okay, as I say, got something to say, got a question to ask, by all means leave a comment. I'll be glad to hear from you.